Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvareh.
Verteugen Teiden als Israel, was wir kennen, sie hatten wenn da die Poshet wo in einer Mikve. Du zähliger mit Größen als Israel, wo sie schon all 30, 40 Jahre, wir kennen sie schnitzen nach viele, wenn wir will. Die der doch Adonisch, der Rogen und Mechumres von Mikvoes, hat die Doktor ein schöne Mikve besser wie Teuden schöne Drosches auf Kiru. Man hat jetzt mit dem Boyen 8 Mikvoes Karen als Israel. Wenn es Schutz für der Wunsch und der Sicher Batzol und Mido keneged Mido und nachher Begdusche in Atzluche in alle Unionen.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Bruchim Abayim, welcome. Since they're changing the clock, Motzei Shabbos, so Be'ezer Hashem, the Monday morning shir will be back to 7:45 because everything will be earlier. Fall back. So we began the Maimer in Torah Lech Lecha by the Balatanya about the essence of a Bris, circumcision. Hashem tells Avram that after the Bris, his name changes from Avram to Avraham, and he wants to understand what that means, what's the significance, what's the connection. Precisely the name Avraham, which represents Avamoin Goyim, you're a leader for the multitudes of nations. For this, he asked a question, generally the famous question in the Medrash that the philosopher asked Rabbi, if Hashem cherishes Mila, if Chaviva hiya Mila, if circumcision is so desirable, why wasn't the person created that way? Why does it have to be done later? And the answer was, he answered that if you look at nature, he gives the example in the Medrash of turmusin, very bitter beans, the way they grow, they're not edible, you Pashat can't eat them. The person has to cook them, and actually not cook them once, but the Gemara says 7 times, and then they're sweetened, it actually becomes a wonderful dish. That was very popular during Talmudic times in the Middle East. So in other words, everything that was created needs tikkun, it needs asiyah and tikkun. It's actually in Chumash, Asher bara Elokim, vayishbez bayom ashri mekol malachte asher asa, vayivarech Elokim esem ashri vayikadesh oisei, ki vayishavas mekol malachte asher bara Elokim lasais. In the beginning of Parshas Bereshis, he rested from all the work that Hashem created to do. So the work that he created was the beginning, it wasn't the end. He created a situation where there's now, you got to do. Asher bara Elokim, you have the foundation, you have the materials to begin lasas. Lasakin, lasas means lasakin. Everything in Sheishis and Mebereshis needs tikkun. And that's the concept of Mila, which is also tikkun. It's doing something in the body, which is not the way most children, most infants are born. But Latanya wanted to understand, why is the mashal, how do you compare the mashal? The mashal to the turmusin are not edible. Taka can't eat them. Like we give other examples of many things that grow, but they still need human input in order to develop. The whole concept of growth, right? If you don't plow the earth and you don't plant, you could say the same thing. It's not called manipulating nature. We're partners with nature in the development of creation. We're co-partners. The Gemara has an expression that whoever says Vayichulu on Shabbos, Friday night, in Mesachas Shabbos, Nasa Shutuf LaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Maaseh Bereshis. You're like a co-partner with Hashem in the work of creation. The human is not just a passive bystander. We're active participants in the work of repairing and healing the world. Our job is not just to be passive. Got it. But he wants to understand the specifics. Turmusin Yitaka can't eat. What's wrong if a person has an arla? It's not like the person can't eat, can't function. It's not chas v'shalom. A child is born with a challenge. A child is born with a heart defect, or with another serious challenge or disease that nobody's going to know. Don't do anything. That's how they were born. Even if they were born that way, you try to enhance a person's life. Nitner reshus l'roife l'rapos. Right? We try to do whatever we can to enhance life. That's why we build homes, and we also make coats. Why don't you just go out in the winter without clothes? Even those who worship nature, they also usually put on a coat when it's when it's cold. Why? And the answer, of course, is because there's sheep, and the sheep have wool, so you could make a woolen coat and you could warm yourself. Everybody does that, right? If you want to live. But he says, l'chayre, the mashal is not like the nimshal. The mashal, you pashut can't eat it. This person was saying, what's wrong with a foreskin? What does it disturb? So you might say, well, he's telling him, well, God thinks that an arla is but then he doesn't need the turmusin. Just say Hashem said. He's trying to explain the Roman or the Greek philosopher, the Havana. He's not just saying the Torah says Bris. The man was asking a question. If it's really true that arla is not good, it's an undesirable or an incomplete state, Tak Hashem tells Avram, Ve'yei tameh, I would be complete. So why create it that way? So you're asking turmusin. So you brought a raya from turmusin. So over there, it's taka visible, it's conspicuous. Here we're back to the idea that I have to rely on you. How is the mashal reflective of the nimshal? That was the question. So the Balatanya began a whole explanation. And just to summarize it, mamish, in a few sentences, say, he renews creation every single moment. And he describes in this maimer, what's the mechadish, what's the renewal? The renewing is not just the creation. The renewal of every moment is the divine energy of creation. Why? Because the divine energy of creation needs to go through a metamorphosis, what's called ayin to yesh. It's not just the creation that's renewed. The divine energy is concretized from a place of ayin, which is no thingness, intangible, infinite, transcendent. And that should be able to become concretized and assume the image of the world we inhabit. That's a chiddush that's every single moment. It's called chiddush yesh mayayin. The oir itself needs to be created every moment, the divine light. And how does that happen? It happens through a series of what's called parsois. Parsois means veils. In Tanakh language, it's called paroiches. In the Beis HaMikdash, you had a paroiches between Kodesh and Kodesh HaKadoshim. He says it wasn't just a technical veil, so people shouldn't see. It was a transformative veil. In order for there to be a break on Kodesh HaKadoshim. In Kodesh HaKadoshim, there's the revelation of Ein Sof. The Gemara says in Yuma that Makam Ha'aron Eina Min Amida. The measurements of the Aron over there, paradoxes, quantum mechanics lived there in a visible way. It was there. That's why you couldn't observe it. Kohen Gadol Kodesh HaKadoshim could observe it. And if he stayed alive, it was a chiddush. because reality was not measured the way we measure reality. The Gemara says in Yuma, right? Which means if you measure the Aron, it had a measurement. 2.5 amas length, it had and it had to have a measurement. And al b'diyuk, amasayim v'chetzi arka, the ark. But the width of the Kodesh HaKadoshim was 10 amas, 20 by 10. So if you measured till the Aron, and you measured, so you measured 10 this is the length of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So you measured from this wall till the Aron is 10. From this wall till the Aron is 10. That's how it worked, because the Aron didn't occupy space. It was like it was a spaceless object. So it's as though it wasn't there, because the room was 20 amas. 20 amas is 20 cubits. That's approximately 30 or 40 feet. Around 30 feet, 35 feet, between 30 and 40 feet, 20 amas. So if you measured it, it was without the Aron. The Aron didn't occupy space. But then if you measured the Aron, it did occupy space. The fact that the Aron was what would be invisible and not occupy space, that's not the Chiddush. We can all understand the concept that transcends space. The Chiddush is it occupied space. And not only that, once from the Rebbe of Art, he said, because it occupied space, it became an Aron. If it wouldn't occupy space, it wouldn't have Kedusha Sa'aron, it wouldn't be a Keli for Einay Min Amidah. So because it had measurements, that allowed it to transcend measurements. So it's not just a paradox, it's complete synthesis. So you say it doesn't work that way, sorry. Either it occupies space or it doesn't occupy space. That was the Kodesh HaKadosh. It's like in quantum mechanics today, right? Does it go this way? Does the particle move this way? The particle can't move both ways. Sorry, it does. The cat is dead or alive. It's both. This is not a language of faith. This is a language of science. The Gemara says beferish makam aron einim and amida, and yet there was a makam aron. If there was no paroiches, if that reality would flow out, he says hakal echad, there would be only oneness. The paroiches creates a new light, the light that travels through the veil on the other side. It's a continuum, but it's not a continuum. There's a leap, a serious leap, and a transformation, and therefore there could be another level of reality. And the Baal Talmud says that's what in Kabbalah, whenever it speaks about worlds, that's what it is. You say there's a one world and another world. There's another world. Another world is another state of consciousness. What makes another state of consciousness? There's a paroiches in between. The Beis HaMikdash itself, there were 13 paroiches. In other words, 13 levels of transformation, one to another. And each world has its own parsa, its own unique, that allows a transformation of a new world, a lower state of reality, which means a lowest. And in each person, in each creature, you have how much is my veil present, and how thick is it, and how dense is it. In other words, how much am I aware of the ultimate truth of oneness with infinity? If there wouldn't be any parsayas, it would be hakalech, it would be one Kodesh HaKadoshim. One Kodesh HaKadoshim. That's the Mechadish B'tuvah. That every moment there has to be an Ur Chadash. It's called an Ur Shel Tulda, the offspring light, not the original light. The light goes through, it's the same light, but it went through a veil. It's a different quality, it's a different caliber. That's why there's Atzilus, Bris, Yitzir, Asi, every Neshama, every Malach, every level, every Madrega. These are not just mystical, weird, strange words. Every parsa creates a different type of perception that defines reality. If you want to use the words, what is the electromagnetic field within that world? I'm just using it as a metaphor, right, that allows certain frequencies of light to be registered in this world and absorbed by the soul or the angel or the reality or the person that's inhabiting that world, and therefore this becomes reality. There's certain colors we don't see. Why? Not because they don't exist. We simply don't have the kalim, the tools in our eye and brain to register them. So we say it doesn't exist. In other words, we call it ayin. That's what ayin means. Ayin doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Ayin means in my world it doesn't exist. Because, sorry, I don't have the tools. There was a big argument inside between Heisenberg and Einstein. So Heisenberg wrote a letter to Einstein, a very sharp letter. So Einstein was not a chassid of quantum physics. One of the areas he was proven wrong. Usually he was proven right, but there's a few areas he was proven wrong. So Heisenberg wrote to him a mashal that there was a fisherman. He said, "You remind me of a fisherman." I think I shared it once. The fisherman, He said, wanted to find out how many fish there are in the ocean. So he put down a net and he lifted it up after a few months, and he had all these hundreds of thousands of species of fish that he brought out from the ocean. And then he came out with an announcement that there's no fish smaller than 5 inches. And everybody was laughing. In your dining room, you have a fish tank. You have goldfish that are smaller than 5 inches, right? And then they realized he wasn't lying. The holes in the net were 5 inches. The holes in the net were 5 inches. If the holes in the net were 5 inches, there's no fish smaller than 5 inches. He wasn't lying. He was saying the truth. Meaning the instruments you use to define reality will define the reality that you discover. Very few people change their net. I don't want to go there. There's no fish smaller than 5 inches. I'm right. That's the net I use. How many people are ready to change their net? In other words, can you redefine the instruments you're using to define reality? You understand how important this is? I can live my whole world, my whole life in a particular space, and I am convinced I'm right, and I'm right. Only one issue. My net has certain, its holes are of certain size. Nothing else comes in, doesn't come in. Everybody's brain is a net. And you have to be open to the fact that the holes in my net are very, very big, and they're not letting certain truths come through. I don't register them. And sometimes the net was punctured. The holes in the net were punctured, and the holes were expanded. That's what some people might call trauma. I didn't say it, you said it. But it's not a bad scientific definition for it. And this becomes my net. This becomes my go-to net, and therefore, if you throw a fish that's of any other size, it simply doesn't exist.
Today there is in science a good paradigm for this, what you're talking about, called polarized fields.
Polarized fields.
Like a polarized glasses. So these glasses, they filter certain type of lights, so they don't let horizontal lights go in because it creates glare. It allows only vertical. But the truth is, if you have multiple polarized surfaces, you can actually block the light completely. To the point, like if you have 3 surfaces, you can block the light. So if you have 2, you can actually see only light of one kind.
Right.
So that's the filters, that's the baroque.
Yeah.
You can filter the light to literally change the direction of the ones that you want to see.
Yeah.
So it's like a totally different perception.
Right.
This type of
The polarized glasses. So it filters the light, and that's what a partitions is. The question is, to what degree does it filter it? How intensely does it filter it? What do you access? Yeah, very good. It's interesting, when the partitions was woven, it says that on the 2 sides you often had different pictures, right? Because on the other side, you have a different picture of reality. Right? In relationships, we know how important this is. I'm talking to you, you're talking to me. Do you hear what I'm saying? Do I hear what you're saying? Usually not. There's a filter. What's the partitions that your words are going through? This is so important, because if I don't look at that partitions, I think I understood what you said. I'm clueless. I'm pashat clueless. You have to always look at what's the partitions. Yeah.
Retrospective view of reality. Some things are not only known in retrospect, and that was the parochus. You could see an image on the backside, which you couldn't see on the
Right. Yeah. So therefore, he says partitions after partitions after partitions, till you reach a point where, in the end of the first paragraph, he says, "Achnes have gashmis mamash." That's like a chiddush. Until Gashmius Mamish emerges. Why is that such a chiddush? Because really there's no Gashmius. Really, how much has to happen there should be Gashmius? We know even today, from a scientific perspective, that they're struggling if there's Gashmius or not. Matter is a derivative of consciousness. I think it exists, so therefore it exists. My mind defines it in a certain way. If I would have different types of eyes, I would see a different world. You already use different instruments, you see a different world. So the Balatanya says, really, the whole mitzvah is that there should be gashmias. How many paroicheses does it take in order to take that energy and turn it into a physical, concrete reality? Now he goes to the next step. Achyesh kama minei mesachim hamavdilin. But there's different types of mesachim. This is page 23, second column on top. Lech lecha. Achyesh kama minei Yud Beis column 2. Achyesh kama minei mesachim hamavdilin. There's different types. There's different species of mesachim. Mesachim are veils, curtains, partitions. Masach in Aramaic is parsa. Paroiches is parsa. Sheyesh oid b'china shemri b'mitzvah Shabbos hamavdil ben kodesh lecha. Mitzvah Shabbos, we say, he creates a partition between the holy and the mundane. In the Mishkan it said, Vivdila haparoiches lechem bein ha-kodesh ubein kodesh ha-kadoshim. Between the holy of holies and holy. But Shabbos, after Shabbos, we say, hamavdil ben kodesh, not le-kodesh. Yom Tov, you say, hamavdil ben kodesh le-kodesh. Mitzvah Shabbos, which is Yom Tov, you make Havdala. It's also Havdala, but Kodesh l'Kodesh. That's like the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the Kodesh. Here, Mitzvah Shabbos, you say Ben Kodesh l'Chayil. There's a different type of partition for that. Sho Masach Mavdil Gamor. This is a much more intense and absolute partition. Ve'eina doimel l'parsa shemavsik ben HaKodesh l'Kodesh HaKadoshim. It's completely not comparable to the veil between the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the Heichel, the Holy of Holies and the Holy. In this case, it's the evolution of the same light that becomes more concretized. Nizgasha means more brute, more crass. As it goes through veil after veil, it devolves, it loses some of its original pristine intensity and infinity, but it's the same light. It's like if you put a curtain by the window, the light of the sun is coming through. If it's not such a thick curtain, it's not going to be the same quality, the same caliber, right? It's not like staring at the sun, but it's the same earth. It just goes through a ishtalshlus. So therefore, even after the partition, it's still holy. So the light is still the same quality, so therefore the creation that it creates and it generates has a similar perception to that which was preceding the curtain. But then you have a masach that pashat blocks the light. It doesn't filter the light, it blocks, like you said in the polarized glasses, surfaces. You have that which filters the light, and then sometimes it blocks the light. It doesn't want sometimes different horizontal light it blocks, or it blocks completely the light. I don't want light to come through. I want a dark room. When they used to develop, you remember the negatives of I want a dark room. I don't want any light to come through. I'm not just creating a curtain to filter the light. It's a masach mavdil gamor. Shemailim, it blocks the light. Doesn't only compromise it, mitigate it, dilute it, filter it, condense it, contract it, restrict it, whatever the right word is. It's mailim. Ad shenasa nifred mamash. So now, the light comes through, but it's blocked. It's blocked. So the reality on the other side experiences itself as nifred mamash. I'm separate. I'm lonely. I'm detached. I'm alone. I'm separate. Mamash separate. This is in Kabbalistic language, it's called Heicholos HaChitzayim. The chambers of the external realities. What an expression. Heicholos are the palaces of Chitzayim, of the external realities. What's for external realities? Realities that only identify the external layer of reality. You could live your whole world identifying only the external layer, and that's reality. Right? This table has an external layer of reality. That's reality. You use a microscope, you'll see other stuff in this table. Huh? 99.9 of it is not matter, right? Somebody once said an unbelievable thing. He said, from a real perspective, right? If you saw the world from a microscopic perspective, all the matter of this planet, all the physicality of this planet could fit in to one carry-on suitcase. Because 99.9 of an atom is empty space. Our eyes can't deal with it, so we make a cholent of it. But he says the gashmius of the world can fit into a carry-on suitcase. The heißt, a carry-on suitcase. He said the ganze Welt is a Schmeck Tabak. It's a Schmeck Tabak. So when he says here, Ad shenase gashmius mamish, it's a chiddush. It's a gashmius mamish. It's really a carry-on suitcase. And that's even from the perspective of Asiya. We're talking a microscope. We're not talking from this perspective of transcendent, infinite reality. A microscope. Still the Gashmius is calm. But it teaches us about how perception is important. Now, it's not a mistake. These veils were made by Hashem. So this creates a whole different reality. It says that Parah, it says in Yecheskel, Parah said, the river is mine and I made myself. How can Parah have that perception? Such levels of arrogance and narcissism. The river is mine and I made myself. When that moment he was being vivified by divine infinite energy, the answer is, how deep is the veil? The deeper the veil, the more the light gets eclipsed, the more it gives room for a complete sense of arrogance and separation. Or on the contrary, a deep sense of insecurity and inadequacy, because the two are really always connected. I need to exist with false haughtiness because authentically I don't feel I exist. But Hashem gives chayas to everything. So the Gemara says in Menachos, many of them would call God the God of gods. They don't deny that there's a higher reality. This is not America 2022. Elokad Elokaya. Elokad Elokaya means there's a God of gods. I'm also a God. Vizel, somebody once said about somebody, he's a self-made man and he worships his creator. Vizel hoidu lelekeya elekim kiliolam chazda. Thank the Elekei ha-Elekim. Shala'olam chazde v'ashpasem me'olam v'ad olam at shubibchinas Elekei ha-Elekim b'makim ha'elam v'hester v'chashach. Hashem allows his flow to go from world to world to world to world to the point that he allows for a world where they define him as the God of gods. In other words, the veil is so deep, and hoidu, you're thanking Hashem that the flow goes to the point that people could call him Elekei ha-Elekim, the God of gods. Even in the place of darkness, he's still a God. On this level, the Navi says, I will dress the heavens with a dark veil. In other words, that the light of infinity gets eclipsed. Within this chayil, there's another two dimensions. First, he said, there's a mavdal ben kodesh l'kodesh and mavdal ben kodesh l'chayil. And it's a completely different reality. Hamavdal ben kodesh l'kodesh, even in the lowest level of perception, there's a perception of oneness, of bittul, of connectivity. In chayil, it's already a new reality of separateness. Now he says in chayil itself, there's two states. Aleph, chayil gamur, absolute mundaneness. Heichal is the noiga. In Kabbalah, it's called the sanctuaries or the chambers of a klipa of a shell called noiga. Noiga means it's shining, because sometimes some light can come through. There's a little transparency. The Karulei Elokad Elokaya, where they call Hashem, again it's an expression from Gemara in the end of Menachos, the God of gods. Keniskelel. Habeis, Hupchinas Chulin Shenasu Al Taras HaKodesh, Chayla Shal Moyed. You have Chayl and you have Chel HaMoyed. Chel HaMoyed is also part of Yom Tov, but it's not like the first days of Yom Tov. In Chagiga, there's an expression, Chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh. There were Jews who were careful to eat chulin. Chulin is regular food, but they ate it with the same purity that you would eat sacrifices. When it comes to karbonis or truma, you have to eat it with purity. Why? Because it's holy food. If you put it, let's say, into a bowl that was impure from a dead weasel, you're not allowed to eat the meat anymore. You got to burn it because it became tummy. So you had to eat kedusha b'tara. There were Jews who ate chulin al taras hakodesh, with the purity of kodesh. It was a different, usually koyanim. They didn't want them confused, so they used to eat everything that came into the house. They treated with the sacredness of karbonos. Or chaverim, there were different people. So the Al-Tari says it's chulin, but it's al taras hakodesh. So he uses this halachic terminology to describe the spiritual idea that there's a different type of chayil. There's chayil and there's chayil. There's hamavdal ben kodesh l'chayil, what you would call real chayil, regular chayil, and then there's chalamayid. Chalamayid means the chayil is also an elevated chayil. What does this mean? Dahainu shenimshecha ara migdusha b'chinas bittul gam b'hachayil. There's a ray of holiness, and how does he define holiness? B'chinas bittul. The definition of kedusha is always a sense of complete alignment. There's no eye that's separate from the cosmic eye. Kedusha equals bittul. What does bittul mean? Bittul doesn't mean self-denigration. Bittul means that the I is an extension of infinity. The I is an extension of Hashem. So that Kedusha is communicated gam b'hachayil, even into the mundane. That makes it chayil hamayid. Like chayil hamayid has an ear of Yom Tov. It even has halachas of Yom Tov. Not in everything. A lot of things it's chayil, but it's chayil hamayid. It's a different type of chayil. The Gemara says when a person observes Shabbos, there's the light of Shabbos that goes into the 6 days of the week. It's not that the week is detached from Shabbos. Gimel Yomim Arishayim Shabbos Sha'avra, v'Gimel Yomim Achrayim Shabbos Haba. In Pesachim, at the end of Pesachim, the Gemara says the first 3 days of the week are a continuum of the previous Shabbos, and the last 3 days of the week are already a preparation for the new Shabbos. The Gemara calls it Basar Shabbata and Kamei Shabbata. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday is a continuum of the previous Shabbos. In other words, if it was a real Shabbos, it goes into Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Havdala you could do till Tuesday. My Vesedra, Havdala. And then the next 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, is Kama Shabbata. It's a Heptikshin on Shabbos. I once asked a guy why he doesn't go work. So he tells me in Yiddish, he says, Ayid Zuntik, Tracht Montik, was wird sein Dienstig? Mittwoch, trachte schon bald Donnerstag und Erev Shabbos. Why should I go work? Right? The whole week was Shabbos. I don't know how to translate it. It works in Yiddish. A Jew on Sunday is thinking on Monday, what should I do Tuesday? Wednesday, he starts contemplating about Thursday. Tomorrow's already Friday. Let's call it a week. The point is, also Shir Shal Yom on Friday, on Wednesday we say L'chun Ranana. The end of the Shir Shal Yom of Wednesday is L'chun Ranana because it's the beginning of Shabbos. So what's this idea? There's a word from the Toldos Yaakov Yosef. The Gemara says, Aseh in Beitz, Aseh Shabbat chachol v'al tetztarech lebrius. Literally, it means make your Shabbos a regular day and don't ask money from people. In other words, better to have a regular, simple meal on Shabbos rather than needing money from people. So he said, Aseh Shabbat chachol. Make your Shabbos define the chol. Bring your Shabbos into the weekdays. You won't need anybody a whole week. You'll be in a different state. Asay Shabbat chachal. Bring your Shabbos into chal. Make your Shabbos in chal. You'll be in a higher plane. So the Balatanya says that Shabbos, there's a ray of Shabbos in the whole week. This is a gift that the Jew receives in the 6 days of creation, that the Kedusha of Shabbos should define the whole week, so that all my actions in the middle of the week should be chayil. It's chayil, it's not Shabbos. But it's chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh. It's chulin that's infused with the purity, with the holiness of Shabbos. V'zeu inyan Havdala b'matzoi Shabbos. Baruch hamavdal habrachi hamshachar sheyachul nasu al taras hakodesh. And that's the whole purpose, that's the reason for Havdala. What's the idea of Havdala? I understand Kiddush, you're welcoming Shabbos, you're greeting Shabbos, Zachar Shabbos l'katsha. What's the idea of Havdala? It's an announcement that Shabbos is over. You can make an announcement Shabbos is over. There's a din of Havdala, and with a kais and everything. So the Balatanya says, the Havdala is not to separate and create a boundary that you don't cross. On the contrary, the Havdala is to create the appropriate partition so that you could continue Shabbos into the weekdays. Proper closure creates a better connection. In other words, when Shabbos ends, something happens. You're going into a different world. It shakes up the person because it's a different reality. The Havdala acknowledges a new reality started And now I'm going to figure out how to take Shabbos and bring it into the week. And that's the idea of Baruch HaMavdil, because the word Bracha in Hebrew is Melashon Hamshacha. Bracha in Hebrew means a flow, to continue, a continuum. Like Brecha is a pool that comes from a sourch of water. Hamavriches Hagefen is you take a vine and you continue. You take a branch and you bend it and you make a new sapling. It's called Mavriches Hagefen. Baruch HaMavdil Mekadosh L'cha. I want to be mamshich through the Havdala, through the veil. I want to take something of Shabbos. Why do you have to say it? Because if not, as you go through that veil, it's lost. And it's hard for you to find your bearings. It's important in life, when you're going into a new stage, to be prepared for that new stage. Because when you're prepared for the new stage, you don't have to get lost. It's not a shock. You figure out, and now I'm going to continue from the previous into this place. But for that, you have to acknowledge that you're crossing a border. There's different rules now. There's a Havdala. If you don't acknowledge that, and you say, oh no, Shabbos never ended. No, Shabbos ended. There was a Yid who loved Shabbos very much, and he would do Malava Malkus till 3 in the morning. And it was once 2 in the morning, and they said, it's late. So he said, it's still too early to be Mekabel the next Shabbos. Right. So the Balatani says, what's Havdala? Havdala is nish stam. Havdala. Havdala is an energy. Havdala is a celebration that I recognize the boundary, but no yiyush. But I could continue the flow into the chayil. But you need the Havdala. You need to recognize that there was a veil because the energy is not the same energy. And then you could have bracha melashon hamshacha, that through the Havdala you bring Kodesh into the chayil. Val zen nemar, what happens now in the weekdays? Sheishis yamim tasem asacha. 6 days you're going to work. It has to be Yemei HaMaisa. It's called Yemei HaMaisa, days of action. It says in Mechilta, Sheishis Yamim Tavoid, Zu Mitzvah Saseh. It's not a popular mitzvah, but it says in Mechilta, Sheishis Yamim Tavoid, Zu Mitzvah Saseh. That's what he says. But you must have a curtain for that. You have to have a mavdil b'kodesh l'chel. Why? What would happen? Sheim loikein hayabitl mamash. Without that masach, you wouldn't be able to work, because the state would be bittul mamash. What's bittul mamash? Bittul mamash means you're completely one and subsumed in oneness. Like a middle of davening shmonas, b'shtachavayis, when a Jew prostrates himself. That's the state. It says ka'avda kamem, middle of Shemona Esrei, right? Complete. You're standing. The says in Shulchan Aruch, you're standing in front of the melech. There's nothing else happening. You don't even pick up your hands. You don't wink to somebody. Why not? And the answer is, you're like having a private audience with the Melech Malach HaMlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It would be inappropriate to say, wait a moment, I have to have a conversation. Imagine the middle of a chuppah, right? The chassan is in the middle of, he's putting the ring on his kalas finger, and in the middle the cell phone rings. So he says, well let me check who's WhatsApping me. What would you say about such a chassan? Huh? It's not. Something is very wrong. Why? What? I'm not allowed to check. The answer is, you have to know where you are. In the middle of Shemona Esrei, it's intimacy. Bein ish leisha, the same thing. Later, after the chuppah, a man and a woman, a husband and wife are together, and he's busy checking his phone. She's busy going onto her Facebook account. In the middle of a moment when you're together, there's something off. It means there's no connection here. So the Balatanya says, in the middle of Shemona Esrei, it's a different type of relationship. He's referring to a Gemara in Maseches Chagiga Daf Hey. There was somebody standing in front of the king, and he was making signs. He was making like all these types of signs, and he was killed. Now, he's not talking about the nature of the kings who would execute people, but the point, it was called Merida B'Malchus. Why? I'm not allowed to sit and make facial features and make signs and make a puppet show. The answer is, Kame Malka. In front of the king who was perceived as Merida B'Malchus. He didn't even speak. He was just making signs with his hands. In front of the king, what was required was awe and humility. So fine, the kings of yore, this was a Roman Kaiser. But the kings of yore, they were despots. But the point is, it was perceived as Merida B'Malchus. Why? Because man de machve b'mochek. Man de machve b'mochek means you make signs. Kame malka, it's inappropriate. So the Balatanya says, let's understand this. How are you going to work during the 6 days of the week? So he's explaining why Shabbos we don't work. It's not Shabbos you don't work only because you're not supposed to work on Shabbos. Shabbos, there's a state of consciousness where work is completely inappropriate. Be'emes ksiv, the pasuk says, Yigia kapecha kisoichel aydei lametas malachas. You should eat from the work of your hands, and those are the 39 malachas, zoireya, chayrish, kaitzer, plowing, planting, plowing, harvesting. That's how you should eat. In other words, you're supposed to work. I'm supposed to cultivate the ground and produce whatever that type of work is. Most work was agricultural at the time. But whatever the type of work is. Which means, the Hainu Shaydeh HaMaisa, Mamshech Haviyah Chadash, Vizhavus Dover Chadash, Lias HaMachadish Betuve Maisa Bereishis Davke. In other words, through my work, I'm actually creating something that didn't exist before. Both of these things could not happen on Shabbos. What's two things? Number one, there's a sense of autonomy. There's a sense of separateness. I'm doing work. I have to be creative. I have to think. In a state of Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Kohen Gadol in Kodesh HaKadoshim, one wrong move, he lost his life. Why? Not as a punishment. Because this is a state where the frequency is infinity. If you go into a place of separateness, you can't exist anymore. Teufus, what he's saying. It's the middle of Shmoneh Esrei. Let's say you're meeting one of the holiest, you're going into a yechidus, to a private audience, right? A tzaddik hadar, yeah? Right, you don't go in and check your phone in the middle and say, I want to eat a falafel, I'm hungry. Why not? What's wrong with eating a falafel? You have lunch, people sit in lunch and eat. And the answer is, you're completely missing the moment. You're completely missing. What's required now is, to be in a state of connectivity. In the middle of Shmoneh Esrei, it's a different type of relationship. That's why the halachas, all the halachas, what you interrupt for, you don't interrupt. And people, God really cares. Let's say middle of Shmoneh Esrei, I answer Kedusha. Here you could answer, here you can't answer. Here you can say Baruch Hu B'Shmai, you can say Amen, Baruch Shmei, no Baruch Shmei. You learned all those halachas, Hefsek B'Tfilah. There's 7.5, almost 8 billion people in the world. Yeah. So if you stopped here, you stopped there, you said but the truth is, in a relationship, it's very important. In a relationship, it's very important. If you go out with your wife for the anniversary, you go to a beautiful restaurant, right? You're sitting half the time, and you're answering emails, right? It's a form, I don't want to use the word betrayal, but there's a deep disappointment. Why is there disappointment? Because there was anticipation of deep connection. So you have to know which world you're in. So the Balatanya says, in the world of Shabbos, the world of Kodesh, there's no room for malacha. Because even in front of the king, to make signs with your hands is called Merida B'Malchus. Sepasnisht. You went into the audience, I wanted to say the President of the United States of America, but he's sleeping. But at least at a certain period, you walk into the President of the United States of America, right? There's a certain awe. Not because the person is a tzaddik, because of the position. So he says, work requires creativity. You have to springen, you have to schwitz, you're plowing, you're planting. You can't do it in that place. That's why Shabbos, there's no work. The energy of Shabbos, it's a place of bittul. We once learned a mime, it says in Yerushalmi, Rabbi Yoina quotes it, Bekushi yitiru l'daber divrei Torah b'Shabbos. Chazal had a hard time of being matir divrei Torah on Shabbos. Imagine. Bekushi. They understood that. So the Alter Rebbe says, what are you supposed to do Shabbos? He says, silence. So he says, silence. And if something, singing. Chess? No, that's too analytical. So, but I realize that most Jews don't know how to be silent for 24 hours. Most people don't know how to be silent for 25 seconds. So what's Shabbos going to be miserable? But that's what. So Gemara in Yerushalmi, Bekushi hitiru l'daber divrei Torah. We talk about Shabbos, divrei Torah. Sorry, it's not supposed to be on Shabbos. Dvar Torah. Wrong day. Sunday, give me Dvar Torahs. Shabbos, no Dvar Torahs. Silence. They once asked Elie Wiesel if in Judaism there's a tradition of silence, because Jews are always talking. He said, yeah, but we don't talk about it. So this part of Shabbos we don't talk about, because what is it supposed to look like? I sit at the table, I look at my wife, she looks at me, I look at my kids, they look at me, and we're quiet. It may actually be a very nice Shabbos table. You need to have the kalim to live in a place of complete silence. But that's the Alter Rebbe's word, bikushi, that's Shabbos. It's a state of oneness with the universe, oneness with infinity. L'payel, they realized you need to make kalim in a world where people talk. So they said, okay, talk Divrei Torah. It was a compromise. So you're going to now go work? Working on Shabbos, you're completely not in the energy. It's like under your chuppah, you're going to start working. I have a real estate deal to finish. This is a moment that requires complete oneness. But since Mitzvah Shabbos, there's a veil, hamavdil. Now the Ein Sof is not manifested. If the Ein Sof is not manifested, so now it's not Mirid B'Malchus to go work. Now Hashem says, go get a job, go work. Shabbos, Chas v'Shalom. Shabbos you're on Yechidus with the Melech Malcham Lochem. Shabbos is Shemini Esrei. Mitzvah Shabbos, go work. You have to go work. In Shabbos, you can't work. You Tofus what he's saying. You need the Havdala to be able to tune into a new level of reality. There's a difference between Shabbos and Chol. When the Kohen Gadol goes out of Kodesh HaKadoshim, it's a different reality. Takes off the clothes, goes home, it's a different reality. There was no danger of going into the Heichal. Kodesh HaKadoshim is dangerous because there's a frequency of infinity. It's like going out of space without the proper gear. You won't be able to survive. Yeah? So what does it mean to bring Shabbos into Chol? Not that I don't work a whole week. Another thing he says, in work, you're creating something. You're a partner. Shabbos, you're just a conduit. There's no I. Work means I create something. Yeah, I went to work, I did something. I planted this tree. I made this deal. There's a sense of creativity. How did that happen? The Baal HaTanya says, for that there had to be Havdala, Hamavdil. Havdala is a big thing. Havdala is not a small thing. Havdala is a change in reality. Well, there's the nusach of Havdala, but then there's also, we do it ala kais, we do it on a cup of wine. But it's a bracha, it's a special bracha, because you need the flow, acknowledging the change, and now I want to bring in some of the consciousness of Shabbos into Chol. Very nice, yeah. When Torah says you should do malacha on Shabbos, for example, somebody needs to be taken to a hospital or something like that. So then, that becomes part of Hilchas Shabbos, right?
So there's no parochas, he's just
Right. There's a machlokes in Rishonim if it's called Chuya or Hutra. If Shabbos is postponed, or there's l'chatchila no prohibition. But then, of course, Shabbos itself demands that, because you're saving a life. You're saving a life that's divine. So, in a state of Shabbos, it's complete oneness. There's no separateness. So work would then be a betrayal of reality, because there's complete attachment, complete connectivity. After Shabbos, it's not a betrayal of reality. It's actually important. It's an invitation, because on Shabbos there's no separateness. So there's no me doing something. After Shabbos there is. There's me working and me creating. How does that happen? He says, "V'zeu asher bara elikim lasos." That's pshat. Hashem created the world lasos. Turmusin tzrichin tikun lapoich miriru lemisku. The beans is not just about beans. It's a metaphor for life. There's bitterness that needs to be transformed into sweetness. Liyos mishatarach be'erev Shabbos yoichel b'Shabbos sheyis'ala hakel b'bchinas Shabbos ki Shabbos hi menucha b'chinas bittul k'may Shemini Esrei v'yefshe liyos kulei Shabbos k'may kulei Shemini Esrei rak tchila liyos yimei hachal. The world is really Shabbos, but you can't get to Shabbos without yimei hachal. It says mishatarach be'erev Shabbos yoichel b'Shabbos. The person needs to work through themselves to create alignment. Because we don't live in a world that's only Shabbos. We live in a world where there's Hamavdal. We live in a world where there's separateness. A very powerful idea. You can't jump into Shabbos if you didn't work through the 6 days. In simple language, it means you have to bring all of your individual features and characteristics into the relationship. You can't enter into a relationship of oneness by amputating your personality, by amputating your creativity. Emunah doesn't mean I don't think, I don't feel, I don't have a heart, I don't have a personality, I'm a shmata, I don't exist. That's Shabbos without the weekdays. You're not one. You know why? Because the you never became one. The you was just repressed or detached. The Yemei HaChol by a Jew is Chulin Shenasu Al Taras HaKodesh. It's infusing Shabbos into a world which is perceived as separate and which Hashem made that way. That's the Turmusin. The Turmusin that are bitter represents a state of reality that initially could feel disconnected. And then you cook it. Through your avodah in the weekdays, you bridge together the two worlds. In other words, you open the curtains.
That's why seven times you need to cook it for the days of the week.
7 times you cook the Turmusin beautifully. And the Gemara says in Psachim, there's Sheva Havdalas, right? In Tanakh, in Chumash, you have 7 times Hashem says he separates. Kodesh Chol, Yisrael Amim, Shvila Sheish Yisrael Ma'isa, Koyanim Leviyim Yisrael, Mayim from Yabasha. You have 7 Havdalas in Chumash, 7 Vayavdals. So I want to elevate the world into Shabbos. I can't just escape into Shabbos. I live in a post-Paroiches world. I don't live in a pre-Paroiches. If we lived in a pre-Tzimtzum world, in a pre-Paroiches world, everything was Shabbos, but we don't live in that world. So you're not bitter about it. Don't get bitter. Cook it. Transform. Why do we become bitter? We become bitter because I feel lonely, I feel misunderstood. But that's your mission. Your mission is to take the Turmusin and transform it. Misha Tarech Berev Shabbos, Yechel B'Shabbos. You elevate the world into Shabbos. How? Not through not working, but through working with the proper consciousness, with the proper awareness. And then from that is created Shabbos, in which you enter into a deeper place of reality. V'tikun zeh gamkin b'chinas hamila. Now we'll understand the secret of the bris. What's the milah? He's going to use here very short and intense language. I just want to tell you the point, what he's making. It's a gewaldige chiddush of the Balatanya. Nasa adam b'tzalmenu kidmusenu. A person is in the image of Hashem. How did existence happen? Through a masach, through a curtain. That is called arla, foreskin. What is a foreskin? A foreskin is that the bris is the organ is covered with a foreskin. So Balatanya says like this. Which part of a person creates? There's one part of a person that creates, and that's the place of the bris. Hashem made that's the procreative organ that the Rebbeinu Shalom gave the energy, gave the ability that from there comes out a seed of life, which when it meets the egg of the woman, an embryo can be created after conception, and a fetus can be developed and a baby can be born. Everything else I do in life doesn't create life. With my brain, I can't create life. With my mouth, I can't create life. I can impact things, but where do I become godlike? There's only one part of the body that becomes godlike. And just in parentheses, I'm just going to say this for 10 seconds. It's so important, this idea, because very often in our culture, these things are taboo. You're not allowed to talk about any of this. So everybody's getting their education from YouTube, and even worse. It's extremely important to be able to communicate about all of this from a refined and genuine point of view, especially as your children are getting older. This is more critical than you imagine. Because even in the most sheltered homes and communities, you just need one kid in the class who's not. So the Balatanya here gives us, he says, let's think about this. Where are you most godlike? Not in your brain. Not in my mouth, not my hands, they're all wonderful. You can build buildings and plant fields and make a lot of money and teach and amazing and right. But where do you become godlike? Where do you create life? Only one part. The organ of the procreative organ, the bris. Ois bris kodesh. In other words, that's where you unleash an energy that brings forth a new life to the world, which is incredible how that happens. And the woman, in her own way, in her own substance, in her own mechanism, how Hashem made the woman's body. So the Balatanya says, essentially, your creative energy comes from that space. And that's where you reflect God's creative energy. Hashem's creative energy is eclipsed by a foreskin. It's called a masach, a parsa, tzimtzum. That's why we don't feel infinite. And you know what? Your creative energy is also covered by an arla. It's a mirror of the whole cosmic reality. The question is, what do we do with these curtains? What do we do with the foreskin of existence? The answer is, we open it up. We're all born with an arla. The whole world is born with an arla. The foreskin in the human body, in the male body, is a metaphor, it's a mirror, it's a reflection of the foreskin of the entire reality which allowed for existence. If there was no foreskin, it was Einaid Milvarji would permeate everything, there would be no separateness. It's the arla that allows for any form of separateness. Even the highest world has a foreskin. So the Balatanya says, when a bris happens and that foreskin is open, don't think it's just in this little baby. The arla of the whole reality opens up. Something is pierced. Something there's a puncture in the veils of reality on every level, from the highest to the lowest, that allows there to be a new level of unity. First of all, for this child, that he will be able to experience oneness in his life. And by a girl, the Gemara says in Gemara, in Avodah Zarah, Isha Kamanda Mehila Damya, that a woman, halachically, is considered already after a bris. It's not sure a woman doesn't have a bris. Halachically, Isha Kamanda Mehila Damya. Generally, femininity is more is more open for relationships, for connection. A mother, rechem, from Miloshin Rachem. The foreskins of separateness are a little more powerful in masculinity, and therefore there's an avodah of a bris. A woman can also detach pretty intensely, but because she wants so much attachment, if it's not there, you go to the other extreme, sometimes more than a man. But by nature, Isha Kamanda Mehila Damya. So the whole idea of a bris milah is essentially the whole tikkun of the world. It's opening up the creative energy so it doesn't go through an arla. It doesn't go through a foreskin. That's a metaphor for the whole system of existence. That's what he's going to say. Avram. What's Avram? What's Avram? Av is a father. Ram is exalted. Avram. Av b'chinas reishis hagilui. Father, when you say you're a father of a nation, you're a father of a family, you're a father of a people. So Av, who b'chinas reishis hagilui, that's the beginning of revelation. Yesh me'ayin, shehu makir hashpa, nikra b'shem Av. The source of hashpa is called the father. You're the father of a company, the father of an organization, the father of a family, the father of a tribe. In other words, you're the source, you're the progenitor, you're the source of hashpa. This is where it comes from. Basically, it represents the beginning of the flow from the divine source into the world. But it remained Ram. Av was Ram, aloof, sublime, detached. Because there was a curtain. So the flow there was no transparency. The Av was Ram, remained aloof, sublime. There was no continuum from the father to the children. It's like a father who remains completely aloof, and your children need permission to go in and speak to him. There's attachment that's missing between the father or the mother and the children. Av, Ram. Spiritually, Hashem is the father of all of existence, but it's Ram. He's perceived as Ram. Ram, Begematria Amalek. 240. Ram is aloof, sublime. Amalek is Malak, Milika. Milika is when you behead the bird, and there's no connection with the heart. It's Ram, everything remains up there, like people who are very cerebral, and nothing comes into the visceral body. It remains aloof. There's a masach, there's a blockage. Sometimes people have a very hard time with emotion, with empathy. I can't feel, I understand everything, I can analyze everything, but there's a blockage. The Av remains Ram, aloof. I can't connect. There's a masach, there's a wall, there's a blockage. Remember, everything in reality, right? Every new world comes from a veil, a curtain. And it's important to understand that sometimes can reach a place that can become pathological. Meaning, when we speak here about the Mesachim, it's the Mesachim that Hashem created. Then there's the Mesachim that we create. How many Mesachim do we create? Right? People could sometimes live behind hundreds and hundreds of curtains. That's the world where I live in. I don't even have access to my own energy. My energy goes through one veil, another veil, until it reaches my conscious brain. And that's where I live from. So that's the energy I'm living with. So the Av, the source, is coming. Everybody gets energy, but it's Ram. It's aloof. Vayidei HaMilah. When Avram does Milah, what's Milah? He opens up the Masach. He punctures the curtain. The layer, the foreskin of existence. It's not just Avram personally. It represents the whole avodah of the Jew. So what happens now? Nikra Av HaMayin Goyim. Now you become the father of the nations. Lahoisif Iskalalus Netzutzas. Now all the sparks from everyone can be drawn to you. Because there's no blockage. It's like the children can come back to their parents because there's attachment. The students can come back to the teacher. The world can be aligned with its source. It's like when somebody punctures through your blockages and all your nitzutzes could come back. For the ray of the divine to be revealed to the point that the sparks could now become subsumed under the wings of the Shekhinah. The sparks are not isolated anymore. The sparks could come back. It's through Milah, through circumcision. Ki Milah oisius mal yutke heim chachma ubina umal hu lashon izgalus. The word mal means to circumcise. It means to reveal. Ki mal milashon memalala. The word mal means to reveal, when something is open. For example, it says, V'hu yoshev mimuli. You sit right opposite of me, right before me, I could see you. Or we have, Vahi ha'adam lenefesh chaya, the Targum says, Vahi ha'adam leruach memalala. In Aramaic, memalala, speaking. Memalala, because what's speaking? Speaking is revealing, bringing out your inner wisdom from a state of potentiality into a state of actuality. So Mila is two words, Mal Yutke. Yud and Hey. Yud is Chachma, Hey is Bina. Yud is the father, Hey is the mother. But they weren't revealed. They were concealed behind curtains. Mila is Mal Yutke. The Yud and the Hey of Hashem, the Av, the father, which is Chachma, is opened. So the flow is now managed through the foreskins of existence. So now all the netzutzes could be subsumed. V'lachein la'asid lavid iksiv az epech al amim safa brura ksiv v'roch al basa yachtav kefi Hashem dibber. When Mashiach comes, it says, I will transform all the nations. All the flesh will see that Hashem's mouth spoke. Mach Mashiach gilui b'chinas dibur his galos alakus his kalos chachma. What the world will see is Kifi Hashem Diber. It says in Yeshaya, when Mashiach comes, the glory of Hashem will be revealed, and all the flesh will see that Hashem spoke. So literally, the Mefarshim say it means that all the promises of Hashem will be fulfilled. But Latanya says, no. You will see in the world Kifi Hashem Diber. You will see in everything the Dibur of Hashem. In Hebrew, the word for thing is davar. Davar is really Dibur. Why? A thing is not a word, a thing is a word. In Hebrew, we know, in Lashon Kodesh, the language of truth, a thing is a word. Shahakol niya bidvaroi. Everything exists through his words, but it's not revealed now. I don't look at reality and see the divine DNA. I don't look at myself and see DNA. I need a lot of tools to be able to go there. They'll see the dibur. When you look at reality, you're going to see this is Hashem's dibur. It's Hashem's utterance. It's Hashem's energy. It's His creative energy. That's what Milah is. Mol Yutke, the Yud and the Hey come out in dibur, memalala, Milah, memalala. His galus alakus, his galus chachma. So when Avram Avinu was mal, his relationship with the world changed. Even though Avram had a tremendous influence before, but there was still a Ram, there was since a sense of exaltedness, aloofness. Avraham, integration. Av hamoin goyim nesaticha. Now you can influence the multitudes of nations. All the sparks will be able to experience your light and be drawn because the masach has been pierced. That's what the milah represents. And he says, "V'gilui zel lamaila hu b'bchinas chashmal." In Yecheskel, there's a word in his vision, chashmal. In modern Hebrew, they call it electricity, but chashmal is a divine energy that Yecheskel speaks about. And the Gemara says that chashmal is chashmal. Itim chashois, itim emalalos. Sometimes they're quiet, sometimes they talk. Chashmal, chashot, et la chashot in Hebrew is quiet. Time for silence, that's chash. Memalel, we just said, is talk. Memalel, the ruach memalel is dibur. Chashmal is, sometimes they're quiet, sometimes they talk. What does that mean? Everybody, hopefully, sometimes they're quiet. Not everybody, sometimes they're not quiet. But what's this idea? The divine energy could be silent. It's not revealed. It's in a state of concealment, like we said when there's a veil. The Gemara says a syag for chachma, a fence to protect wisdom, is silence. You don't want to talk because it like squanders the energy. So naturally it remains silent. But itim emalalois, it comes out. That's dibur. So this is the divine creative energy. It could be completely silent, it's not expressed, or it could be revealed. The word mol doesn't only mean speaking, it also means Yoshev Mimuli, you're sitting right before me. In other words, something that I could see, it's in front of my eyes. If it's not in front of my eyes, I can't say it's muli. So the word mal, milah, mal is revelation, communication, revelation. Ulamata bada matachta. Now it's in the person too. Hashem says, let's make man in our image. Yesh gam kein masach al ever hamashpia. So a person also has a veil, an arla, on the aver, on the organ, which is the mashpia, which is the father. The organ that turns you into a father, the bris, has a masach. Just like the cosmic father, the Rabbi Shalom, has a masach, and the whole reality comes through that masach, through that veil, through that foreskin, through that cover. A person is in the mirror of Hashem, so we have the same thing. Why did Hashem create the masach? That it should stay there? No, that you should elevate it, that you should work it through, that you should bring the darkness, bring the light into the darkness, transform the bitter turmusin into sweetness. The masach wasn't there to stay. The curtain wasn't there in order to create a blockage. The curtain was there to create a much deeper relationship. A relationship in which you can bring the oneness into your separateness. That even the person on the other side of the masach is still connected. Because I work through the veil. Simple English it means, simple language. That all the blockages we have in life are not there in order to stay for eternity. They're a journey, they're not a destination. The function is that I should be able to really work them through and bring the light through the veil until the reality post-veil becomes one with the reality pre the veil. That's what it means from the weekdays you come into Shabbos. You pick up the whole world into Shabbos, into Shemona Esrei, Yom Shekulei Shabbos. But not by jumping over the veils and not existing on the other side of the veil. Then there's no Chol, there's only Shabbos. There's no Direi B'Tachtonim, there's no connection with the world. This is elevating the world. So he says the person also is the same thing. You have the Aver HaMashpiyah, and it has a Masach. Shahu b'chinas Ram. And therefore, your creative energy remains Ram, aloof, hidden, exalted. Hanistaros l'Hashem Elokeinu chachmo bina. V'haniglois lano levanenu. She'edei hamila nasa niglois lano levanenu. She'hagilui ein ele b'chinas levanenu shu b'chinas haylada. The pasuk says, Hanistaros l'Hashem Elokeinu. That which is hidden is for Hashem. Hanigla is that which is revealed is for us and our children. So he says, Hanistaros l'Hashem Elokeinu represents Yud Kei Chachma and Bina. Hanigla lano levanenu is when it gets revealed through the bris, it becomes revealed to you and your children, because that's the part that creates children. It creates birth, it creates a new generation. Ki lachein kasher nitoisev hei ba'Avram mikol makom le'neker hareish ba'Avram shadayinu b'chinas ram ela shenitoisev b'chinas hei liyus b'chinas ram zeh begilui. That's why the Rebbeinu Shalom didn't take out the reish. He didn't call him Avram. He called him Avram. You don't take away the reish. You don't take away the ram. You don't compromise the exaltedness. You reveal it. You're not removing the exaltedness of Avram. You don't take away the reish. You bring the reish into the hay. The hay reveals it. V'hu hamila. And that's what. And v'hine hamila higili. That is the revelation of the milah. So when he asked when the philosopher asked him, if Hashem wants milah, why is there an arla? And he said everything needs tikkun, like the turmusin. So what's the connection? The turmusin is a metaphor for the idea that the world by nature could be bitter and dark, and the person transforms it into sweetness. Why is that? Because there's a foreskin that doesn't allow us to perceive the oneness of existence. The bris milah then is the tikkun in the person that opens up this person to their own elokus. And that's why the bris milah is the covenant of the Jewish people. Why is it the covenant of the Jewish people? Spiritually speaking, the bris allows all the blockages to be opened up. Because the arla is not just a physical foreskin. It's a metaphor for all the foreskins that exist in life. Physically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. The bris is the covenant with Hashem and the covenant with the people for eternity, because it represents the idea that you're not blocked for eternity. You can open up the masach. It opens up the arla, it opens up the masach, and what happens? The person himself or herself can experience their own divinity, their own soul, their own truth, their own Ein Sof. Without the milah, there is that arla that filters everything to the point where the light becomes eclipsed. So the whole idea of B'hamavdil ben kodesh l'kodesh ben kodesh l'chayil, in order to bring the kodesh into chayil, shenasu al taras hakodesh, that's what the bris represents. And it's not just for the child himself, it's for the people and it's ultimately for the whole world. Every bris affects the whole world. That's where Eliyahu HaNavi comes to the bris. Eliyahu HaNavi is the one who heralds redemption. Redemption is when the world will be circumcised. V'nigla k'vayid Hashem v'ro chol basa yachtav kifi Hashem diber mila memalala mal yutke mimuli. So Eliyahu HaNavi attends because this is his celebration. Whenever we remove a blockage, there's always a pain involved. A bris is painful also. Whenever you remove a blockage, I'm laughing, it's not so funny, it's painful. Because I'm used to it, right? And psychologically it's that way. A person may live behind what they call protectors. I may have 1,000 different protectors that I live behind. You know, again, there's the curtains God creates, and then there's the curtains I create. Or we create, intentionally or unintentionally, consciously or subconsciously. But I may be living behind 1,000 veils, right, hidden away, and nobody's getting close, because even if you get through one veil, you're not coming to the second. And even if you get through 1,000, I have another 1,000. And if you get close, I kill you, which is another veil. So I live behind those mesachim, and we communicate through those mesachim. Anybody knows what I'm talking about? Sometimes our whole communication is through the veils. You know, you peek through, safe, okay, you'll send a message. It's very hard. I can't connect to you, you can't connect to me, I don't let you into my life. I don't allow myself to go into your life. Everything is with mesachim. Veils, veils, veils. Here he's talking about the general ones, but the mesachim are endless. How many concealments do you create, blockages do you create in order to filter everything that comes through you? To you and everything that comes out of you. It's a safe place. I do it to cope. I want to survive. I'm afraid. I can't be present in life. How can I be present in life? So either I shut off my emotions. What's that? I take not a veil, I take a chaim, I take a wall. I put my emotions inside. I surround it from all sides with a chaim, and nobody's getting close. Even I'm not getting close. You understand that word? This is the whole process of creation. Creation allows for distortion after distortion after distortion after distortion to the point of complete detachment in your perception. Comes the bris, and the bris changes everything. The concept of a bris milah is not just a physical process for the child, it's an emotional process for the parents. And it's not something I do when I'm 8 days old and that's it. It's a continuous avodah of opening up and asking, what are the arlas? There's an expression in Chumash, umaltem es arlas levavchem. Circumcise the foreskin of your heart. Doesn't mean physically. You're not supposed to do milah on your heart, chas v'shalom. But arla is a metaphor. Huh? Breslev. Arlas halev. There's the arla on the heart. My heart is blocked by foreskins. Nothing goes in, nothing goes out. By how many veils? I don't know. Could be so many. So the bris milah is opening that up. That's a form of geula, creating alignment. And alignment doesn't mean I obliterate myself, because then I'm not creating alignment. Then I'm just going back to pre-creation. Alignment means I lift myself up. I bring in my blockages, like we learned in the Maimer of Noach. You bring in your tension. You bring in the pressure. You bring in the Mayim Rabbim. The Teva becomes from the Mayim Rabbim. You bring that into Shabbos. You bring your work into Shabbos. You elevate it. It all gets elevated into Shabbos. Chevra Teifes. And he finishes the Maimer. V'hine hamila higilui. Mila means revelation. Upriya higilu yosek. Kama yoparas reisha isha. Shchita meforas. In Milah, there's two processes. There's called Milah and Priya. Right? The Gemara says, Mal v'loi para kilei. If you know about a Bris, a Priya is the second stage of opening it up. The word para also means to open. It says, Ufaras roisha isha by saita. You expose the head of the woman. That's where we learned that a married woman should cover her hair. Because it says by saita, Ufaras roisha isha. You reveal, Parshas Nasa, you expose the head of the woman. It's a mitzvah in Torah by saita. So that means regularly you don't do that. So the word fara means to open, to reveal. Shchita meforas is also an expression in Chulin. So the word priya is a continuous opening. Milah, we said, is to open up because it means to speak mul and it means mimuli. And priya is then the next stage. What does this do? Hamasach hamavdil. What are you opening? You're opening the curtain that separates ben kodesh l'chayil, the Yisrael shenasu al taras hakodesh. So this allows that the Jew should have chulin that's altaras hakodesh. It's not chulin that's detached from Shabbos. It's not Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday that's separate from Shabbos. It's a continuum of Shabbos. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday is a continuum. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is a chana for Shabbos. The bittul, the kodesh hakadoshim of Shabbos is infused throughout the week, even though it's not the same. The week is the week, Shabbos is Shabbos. When Mashiach comes, as Yom Shekulei Shabbos. But it creates that connection. Why is that so relevant? That's the tikkun of the whole bria. And that's the koyach that the Jew gets by the bris milah. Every child, that his or her life becomes opened up to Elokus. What it literally means in simple words is that the Jewish consciousness becomes, it's like an antenna. You become open to the vibe of godliness. That's why Jews have a hard time in this world. They're looking for meaning the whole time. Why are they looking for meaning? Because they had a bris. The bris basically, it punctures through the concealment, so you feel that there's a higher energy, so you're looking for it. You're looking for purpose, you're looking for meaning, you're looking for fulfillment, you're looking for alignment, you're looking for bittul. The bris opens up the Jewish soul, it literally opens up the heart, it opens up the masach. That even the chulin have a flow of the Shabbos. Shehi ikir Havdala, and that's the main separation. Kodesh and Chol. Ki b'shiva Havdalas lahavdal ben atam echuli einon u'evrim l'vishein tzrichim kol kach. K'me'achar shem avidim Havdal shem kodesh l'chol chuli. The Gemara says in Pesachim, Daf Kuf Dala, there's 7 Havdalas, but in Mitzvah Shabbos we don't say all of them. The first is we say Hamavdal ben kodesh l'chol ben ar l'choshech ben stolam me'im ashvil l'shesh. We don't say the other ones, and then we finish Hamavdal ben kodesh l'chol, because the Balatanya says there's many Havdalas that Hashem made. But the most important one is, and that's why we finish over that, is Hamavdal ben Kodesh l'chol. Because once the Kodesh and Chol Havdala is created, from there come all the other separations. Separation between water and dry land is the same thing. Water is Alma Deskasya, dry land is Alma Desgalia. Water is a mikveh, dry land is separateness. Water, everything is one. Kamayim le'amachasim. Tameh and Taher, different levels, different nations. But it's all the Nekuda Hamavdal ben Kodesh l'chol. Chol is a sense of pirut. Once you can remove and help that Havdala create ha'achdus, so then ultimately the other ones will be taken care of. That's why we mentioned that one. Hamavdal ben Kodesh l'chol, that's the Ikar Havdala, and that's Negei to Mitzvah Shabbos. Everybody have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos and Hatzlacha Rabbah. And Be'ezer Hashem will resume Monday morning, 7:45.
Because you're not acknowledging that.
Yeah. You're saying if you call Avram today, over belav, unlike Yaakov. Yeah. Kol hakoyrei la'Avraham, Avram over belav, shenemar v'lo yikarei od shemcha Avram. Right. So why is that such a big deal? So now we can understand, because the name, like Yaakov, even when his name was changed to Yisrael, there's still an Indian of Yaakov. But once Avram became Avraham, it's no more Avram, no more detachment. No more separation. So you're not allowed to call Avram, because it represents the conception of separateness. Avram, I'm way above there. Like we say in Hallel, Ram al kol goyim Hashem. You know, Ram. He's up there, in heaven somewhere. It says the Haman said, "Let's make a tree gavoya chamishim amma and put Mordechai there." So once put him, the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, why Chamishim Amma? Mordechai wasn't so tall. The Gemara says, Basra, that a bird above Chamishim Amma, it belongs to everybody. Below Chamishim Amma, you have to know, it's a reshus of somebody. Yeah, Machikines HaShoivach. So Chamishim Amma is it's like the reshus of heaven. So he said like this, Haman said, Mordechai is a Heilige Yid, a holy Jew, but he belongs Gavoya Chamishim Amma. He doesn't understand what happens in the world. He belongs up there. Gevaldik, a source of inspiration. Put the picture, Gavoya Chamishim, I'll have a picture of Mordechai. Comes to the real world, over here, Haman is the boss. That's the union of Ram, right? Amalek. Yeah, also. Maral says, yeah.
So, thank you so much. The Shabbos meal is going to be different meal.
The Bris. I got the email also to talk about it.
So we're supposed to remove all those curtains.
Well, if you look at Amalek, right, his Kuf is 100 and Ayin is 70 and 40, right, is 210 and Lamed is 30. So Amalek begematria Ram, because Amalek says Hashem is up there, and Amalek is Miloshin Umalak. Malak is Melika. You detach the head from the heart.
Are we allowed to, supposed to live in this world? I mean, not in this world.
Yeah, we're going to live in this world. The Rambam says, but it's going to be a world that's infused with the sense of oneness.
Do it now, in this world, meaning in this world.
Well, our avodah is to do it now, but in the way that we can do it now.
Right.
That's still through work. Sheishis Yamim Tavoid is part of the avodah. Because the point is not that there's no veil. There is a veil. There is a curtain, right? We were sent into this world for a purpose. The point is to bring Shabbos into the weekdays and to bring the weekdays up to Shabbos. That's what it's saying. Mishatarach be'erev Shabbos yochel b'Shabbos, because he uplifts the weekdays into Shabbos. We don't just daven Shemona Esrei all day. Why don't we just stand in Shemona Esrei all day? Because we were sent into a world where with not Shemona, you go away from Shemona Esrei. Like the Kohen Gadol doesn't stay in Kodesh HaKadoshim a whole year. He goes in, and that's it. Why? It's a good place to be. It's a very good place to be, but your job is to go out of Kodesh HaKadoshim, not to stay inside.
I think we should implement having meditation before and after Shemona Esrei, like they used to do back in the day. I think
It would be a good idea.
So here's the question.
only we had the time.
If we are supposed to live on those different levels, those worlds, in this world, so what is our avodah? Is our avodah to be in the Asiya? Or is our avodah
Yeah, focus more on Asiya.
okay.
Focus more on Asiya.
Rabbi.
Hatzlacha Rabbah, thank you for coming.
The Rebbe is bringing Gemaras and Chazal. So obviously, Chazal, they knew this stuff. I'm saying that, but did Rashi and Taisus know any of this? They don't talk about it.
Well, this is what's called Pnimiyus HaTorah. Right? It's called Pnimiyus HaTorah. Rashi and Tosfos focus on Nigla the Torah.
I understand. But I'm asking. Did they know it? Because
Many of them knew it very well, to different degrees, to different levels. But there's a machlokes about the Rambam, for example. If you learn Chachmas HaKabbalah or not, it's a big machlokes, right? Balatanya said that he did, but it was behelim, very concealed. He said until the Arizal, most of Kabbalah was very concealed.
So but they didn't write about it.
Right. Well, most of the Sfarim were written in Nigla.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. So it's two halakim. It's like guf and neshama.
Except how can you say that it's only guf, meaning?
Because it's really one.
No,
It's just a manifestation of it.
I'm sitting here, I'm listening to this stuff. I never heard it before. I learned in yeshiva for many years. I was living there for 20 years. I was in Tehillah the whole time.
You were learning.
I was learning. I never learned any of this stuff. I'm saying, so from Chaim Shmulevitz, I learned in Mir. Chaim Shmulevitz, he never talked about that. I don't know if he did or didn't, but saying it's what I'm saying is that it seems like all the nigla that I personally learned, now I could see that now it all makes sense. But if you're learning it only on the level of nigla,
Right.
if that's all there is, I think you're missing the boat, and that's what I'm feeling.
So how do you do it for so many years?
Shmak, I mean, it's terrible.
It was geschmack. So you weren't missing the book. So why do you?
Oh, I'm saying whatever the Gemara.
Kalakoydel Avraham, Avram.
Avram as ever.
Over
I
belav.
learned that Gemara before, right? And you can handle a rai what it means and halachically and thus, and we can ask Chassidus to the.
But the pnimius was missing.
If you never learned what it meant, and I never learned what it meant until today.
Right.
I'm just saying it's.
So that's the gift. That's the gift of pnimius haTorah. Zois haTorah Adam.
So the
Torah.
Chaim Volozhin, the guy, he learned it. I'm saying that.
Chaim Volozhin writes that the Vilna Gaon spent more time learning pnimius haTorah than Nigla. That's what he writes.
So, I don't know.
But yeah, you're right. The curriculum of most yeshivas, it's not taught.
So they learned it in outside of the curriculum, or Baruch Ber learned it outside the curriculum?
I don't know about not. So many of the Litvish Gedolim didn't learn it. Chaim Volozhin did. The Vilna Gaon did. The Vilna Gaon was a Gaon Otzim in Pnimius HaTorah. Yeah, some people felt in Shitta maybe that it's not necessary, it's confusing, let's just focus on halacha.
Confusing it is, but it's not necessary.
There was such a mahalach. Stay away from it. It's mystical. It's spiritual. There was such a mahalach. Today, I think, we see clearly that it's oxygen for so many. It's oxygen because it just gives Yiddishkeit a level of sophistication and depth and varmkeit and substance and personal relevance. That is literally oxygen for many people. That's part of the development towards Geula.
I think the fear is that if you only have that, it's like having that
You can't have a neshama without the guf. If you have a neshama without the guf, you can't live. You're living, up there in the skies. Right. That's why the guf is so. The guf is a manifestation, but it's not. But the point is, it's not really two separate things. It can be perceived as separate things, but it's not really. One is just like the guf and the neshama. Where is the neshama and where is the guf? Right. And the answer is, it's fusion. The guf is a conduit for the neshama, and the neshama is expressed in the guf. So I'm saying, the Avnei Nezer writes this in Charles Chuvas Avnei Nezer that there's literally no nekuda in nigla that's not a manifestation of pnimius, and there's no nekuda of pnimius that's not expressed in nigla because it's one. This is just the body. This is the concrete manifestation of it. Halachas of muktzah, halachas of ribbis, or halachas of nezikin, or halachas of halva, halachas of brachas, whatever it is, halachas of tumah v'tara.
Right. So maybe I'm trying to understand. Maybe the kavanah of the yeshivas is that get first all the basics down, and later on you'll figure out the panemius, I guess.
Yeah, there could be different. Yeah.
And the fact that Rashi didn't write a sefer, how come Rashi didn't write the Torah? Or, I mean,
Well, there was a system. In other words, generally, Chachmas HaKabbalah, the Gemara in Chagiga, Ein Darshan R'maisa Merkava, it was generally transmitted in a very clandestine manner, in a concealed way. They didn't write Svarim about it. It was very little. Even the Zohar was revealed much later. It was revealed in the 1300s. Reb Moshe de Leon. Some people even wanted to say that he wrote it. It didn't come from earlier. And basically, Reb Chaim Vital brings from the Arizal that that's only now mitzvah legala zoysa chachma. That's the 1500s. That's late in history. Today, mitzvah legala zoysa chachma. And then the Mashiach, famous Baal Shem Tov, wrote in a letter that he met Mashiach, and he said, "When are you coming?" He said, "L'chsheyafutzu my noisecha chutza." So that's all part of the development. Just like there was a zman of Chumash, there's a zman of Nach, there's a zman of Mishnah, there's a zman of Gemara. Why wasn't Mishnayos right in the beginning? Why wasn't Gemara? Rishonim, Achronim. As Hakoil also Yafa Be'itoi, right? Hashem is Megala different halakim of Torah in a more concrete fashion in every day. I think as the Choshech of Galus became stronger in terms of assimilation, disinterest, also.
You saved the body of plants, so in liquor, everyone went off the deck. Everyone. I mean, there was a few little, but I'm saying.
Right. So in
everyone comes from Hasidim.
Right. So in Lithuania, they couldn't withstand the powers of secularism.
Enlightenment.
Yeah, it was just too powerful. I mean, you had some, serious G'dali pockets. But generally, Lithuania was lost to Yiddishkeit. The power of the Chassidim was Pneumius HaTorah, the Chassidus.
Rabbi Wein has a part about that. He said, because in Poland, your neighbor, you didn't want to be like your neighbor. He was a drunken.
I hear you.
In Germany, it was your neighbor was a
sophisticated.
Nice guy.
Looked like a nice guy. Till 1935, yeah, he looked like a nice guy.
Yeah.
So I think as the Choshech HaGalus, became more intensified, there was a deeper revelation of Pneumius HaTorah, and that's on one level. That's because of the darkness, and also the closer you get to Geula. Rashi writes in Shir Hashirim, "Yishakeni min ashikas piyu." That when Mashiach comes, he's going to be Megala, soid ta'ameha umistar tzfunaiseha. The lashon of Rashi. Soid ta'ameha. He wrote that. You could see Rashi, Shekenim and Shikas Piyu. The Mashiach comes. So the closer we get to that, the more revelation there is. Finished.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Not relevant to anything that's going on.
A lot of atzlacha. Pleasure to have you.
Could Rabbi get the video sent, an article
About what?
about my Bris?
No, you sent an email?
In WhatsApp.
I didn't see, no.
Oh, okay.
Send me. Maybe by email. It's easier. Yeah.
Came across in Shabbat.
Yeah.
The Shulchan Aruch says, "Alpha Pisha Mitzvah L'Daktik B'Yaseh Krav L'Diktik Ben Yatsa."
Yeah.
So the Mishnah says, "Yatsa Mikol Mokim Yizor Me'od L'Chatchila V'Zeh V'Izu B'Shas HaMedaktik Behen Schare Shemitzanan L'Gehenim." The schar is that.
It's a good example.
Please
Without Pneumius HaTorah, you can't understand this.
Please explain this idea.
Yeah.
My whole schar is that
They're going to cool off the
They're
Gehenna.
going to cool off the Gehenna for me. I mean, I'd like to think that I'm going to a better place, and maybe my schar should be.
Spoke about it last week,
Maybe it's
I hear you.
the bottom of the plate.
Which Mishnah is
All the way
this?
on the bottom, so.
Simen Samach Beis, yeah? But Mishnah Dankte B'Seseh, Karav Olay Diktik Ben, Yatsu.
And Yatsa.
L'Nosin Revach Bein Adveikim.
The next one, Yatsa, and this one.
Mishaloi Hittis Azayin Shal Tiskiru, right? Zayim Red L'Chatchila, Medaktik Ben, Schare Shemetzanan Lebeyanim, Shal Midi Keneged Ben Shmacha, Shuma Oiren, Atzmei Bazeh, Omenias Chumei Hativi L'Daktik Ba'osyes. ובשכר זה החיים הטבעי שהוא מעורר מצנן לא כנגדו חיים
I don't really
אחר
understand that either. But
שהוא
that-
בגהנם
I don't
בייס
fully
יויס.
understand Chaim HaTivi, what that means at all. But this is like a very difficult Mishpur.
Wow. This is Kabbalistic. It's
I
spiritual
understand.
stuff.
That's I'm a show with it. It's like
Wow.
a different,
Interesting.
different level.
So it doesn't mean you didn't mention a letter. Of course, you're not Yaitz. It means you weren't medactic. You weren't medactic in the Isis. Right? For example, tizkidu. The pronunciation, the spaces. So the Beis Yosef says that in order to do that, you have to be more passionate. You have to be more attentive, more medaic, more, what's the word? Heated, right? So because you aroused your natural passion, medactic in the Isis, so that heat
And it sounded like a-
cools off. It gets rid of the other heat. It gets rid of the Gehenna heat. That heat compensates or eliminates or weakens the fire, the heat again, because your heat replaces that.
Does this mean that a person is anticipating that he's going to get him, but it's going to be a little cooler for him? What does this mean?
It's a good shaila.
I'm not asking them different things. I'm just pushing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Could I say something?
Yeah.
You
The
can
Chaim.
do tshuva. You can do Taveres. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't go to him. He did Taveres too.
I hear. You're saying so there are people who leave the world and never ever do anything.
Right. Like the tshuva.
I guess that's not my gift to that guy.
Yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu.
That guy is Medactic, as you say. We're talking about a guy who's not.
I hear. I just. I like to think that it's right not to go to him.
What's Gehenna? That's the question.
It's a bad place. Whatever it is, it's a bad place.
Yeah, this is it's a hot mikveh. That's it.
I hear, medaf trachten.
It says
This is the way how
By
we speak to
Shiva
somebody
Bris.
on this world. It's expression how you should experience to understand it, but it's not.
This is very
how
depressing.
Over there.
You wanted to speak to people like that? You want to push people up? You're going to go to Gehenna, but it'll be a little cooler.
just
The
understand.
Rabbi spoke about it last week. About Gehenna.
Just understand what it's saying.
It's not
There are
what
ways
we're
to
doing as
say.
kids.
Okay.
It's not what we're
Creation,
Simon Samach Beis, the Mishnah Berurah from the Beis Yosef. That if you're medactic in Isis, when you say Kriya Shema, right? So some people, they say the words and the letters, but they're not medactic in it. For example, you know, Laman Tizkiru or Al Levavecha, Al Levavecha, Al Levavecha. So he says you're Yoitze. You're Yoitze, it's fine. So the Mishnah Berurah brings from the Beis Yosef, but you should be medayik in Krishma to do it. And the schar is they cool off the Gehenna. Why? Because since it takes from you warmth and passion to be medaktik, so you get rid of the fire of the Gehenna. Mida keneged mida. Huh?
Wasn't
You mean for the
weren't slaves in the
mitzanen in loy Gehenna? Pashtus.
We're
Mitzanen in loy.
learning Torah.
Yes.
The
The zeyah von der Mitzvah, the shveis von der Mitzvah.
I hear what you're
Wie der Kotzkere, wie der Bleibele Eger. Weißt du, meister Bleibele Eger.
Why is it that
Also by
So nicht kemilse de loy schchicha, as me springt, ah?
say that when you bake matzahs and you sweat and
It's a metaphor.
But let's look at
Fire is a metaphor. Gehenna is a spiritual reality. It's not like...
It doesn't say the time is Gehenna.
as kids we're taught guys flacker in Gehenna, you're going to be burning Gehenna.
Wow, you said that well. You learned in a Yiddish... Oh, sehr schön. A Yid kann nicht werden kein Goy. Ah, das hat mir noch nicht erzählt. A Yid kann nicht werden a Goy. A viel will.
Try to do Kira with a line like that.
Yeah. I don't know if the Eish HaTorah uses this Mishnah Berurah. Interesting. We have to understand what Gehenna is. Gehenna is really a metaphor for what's happening in this world. Meaning, like the Gemara said, the others were in Gan Eden in this world. We do Gan Eden in this world. Gan Eden is a state of consciousness. Gehenna is a state of consciousness. Gan Eden is a place where a person experiences their oneness with Hashem. And the pleasure of that is infinite. Lis'aneg al Hashem, like me'ein olam haba. What's Gehenna? Gehenna is not a bad place. Gehenna is like therapy. If I'm blocked up spiritually, emotionally, I can't talk to my kids, I can't open up. So somebody has to help me open it. It's painful because we have to get rid of the fears and insecurities and traumas, or even physically, an infection. If you take out an infection, take out a splinter. It's not geschmack to take out a splinter. Gehenna is not just to crush people. Gehenna is a process, a cosmic divine process of spiritual therapy where the soul cleans out what it has to clean out, where it spits out what it has to spit out. It's a form of cleansing. It's like I put my clothes in the washing machine with chemicals and water, not to punish my clothes. I have nothing against my clothes. I like my clothes. But I want to make, it shouldn't be dirty, it shouldn't smell. That's the process, really. Right? So Gehenna is not this bad torture chamber that you started up with me, I'll show you who you are, I'll kill you, don't start up with me. Why would a father want to do that to a child? I want to be able to help the soul be able to come back to its true purity so that it can be everything it is. And it can be everything it is. That's the concept. So Gan Eden and Gehenna is not only in that world, it's also in this world. Meaning a person could live in this world, in Gehenna. The next world just reveals where I live. A person is living with blockages and lies and deception, what they call a Ponzi scheme. I'm in a Gehenna. Somebody, the Gemara says that somebody who has a horrible marriage, right? Because they already had it. Yeah. I can be in Gehenna, it's an Erevin. I can be in Gehenna in this world. I can be Gan Eden in this world. So Gan Eden and Gehenna are just manifestations of where the person is in reality. Now, everybody ultimately has a chelik in Gan Eden, but sometimes they have to go through a process. It says we say Kaddish for 11 months, because even the biggest Roshas in Gehenna only Yud Beis Chodesh, right? And you don't want to make your parent a Rosh, so you do only 11 months, because even a Rosh is only Yud Beis Chodesh. There are the few exceptions, it's a longer process in Rosh Hashanah, Gehenim Kala, Vehemeinim Kala. It's unique neshamas that have to go through much more. But that's generally the process. So I think the point is as follows. Every person in life needs passion. Without warmth, I can't live. A person is passionate, right? The question is what I'm passionate about. Every person needs attachment. Every person needs connection. Yeah. Sometimes a person doesn't have attachment with people, they go to drugs. A person doesn't have a good marriage, they go to other things. But everybody needs love, everybody needs attachment, everybody needs warmth, everybody needs fire. You can't live without fire. The body can't live without warmth, right? We need to regulate a certain level of temperature, and the soul can't live without fire. So I think the idea here is, if I could create fire from good things, passion, from healthy, powerful, holy things, it eliminates the passion that I'm going to have in the opposite things. There's a person who has passion for alcohol. There's a person who has passion for gambling. There's a person who has passion for drinking. There's a person who has passion for other stuff. Right? That's called Gehenna passion. And then there's a person who has passion for goodness, for relationships, for family, for friendships, for Kedusha, for Hashem. So it's Zelu Umazeh. It's Zelu Umazeh. The heat of Gehenna is the heat that it's literally like when I'm cleansing something in fire to open up, to remove the stains, to remove the dirt. So that's what he's saying, that when a person has, Krishma is all about passion. Kabbalah Sal Malchus Shemaim, Dveikus, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem, V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, B'chol Avavcha, B'chol Nafshcha, B'chol Moedecha. It's at the time of Avos Hashem. So if my Krishma is experienced with that type of passion, automatically my Gehenna fire is already a Shvacha fire.
There's less passion for other things.
Yeah.
Typhus,
what I'm saying?
I hear
So it's actually good for Kirov. But it has to be said in different words.
I'm going to ask just on the hashkafa that was just presented, though. We find, though, that the punishment of kares comes after the gehenim that the nefesh experiences for all that various that he has done. So if the purpose of Gehenna is to cleanse, then why is there a chorus after that? Just give him chorus before it. It's not just a. Why is he getting Yisurim? What's the purpose of that?
Even when you say chorus, chorus is never absolute.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a chiddush to me, I didn't know this.
Yeah. Yeah. Bal yidach menu nidach. Ah?
What's cars and what does it mean?
Yeah. There's two pchinas in the neshama. One is called Yaakov, one is called Yisrael. Chorus could be in the level of Yaakov. That's the way the neshama is embodied in the guf. But there's a nekuda of Yisrael that's never cut off. It can't be cut off. It says it's echad, yachid, umeyuchad, im Hashem yizbarach, beli shum pirud, b'shum oifen. And that's the pchin of afal pi shechata Yisrael hu. Because the chelik elokam mimal is essentially part of Hashem. So there's nothing I can do that will cut that off. What I could do is, I can cut off the spiritual oxygen that's embodied in me. Just like if a person, chas v'shalom, cuts off their source of oxygen, the oxygen is there, but their body is not receiving it. So that flow of the neshama gets cut off. But the neshama itself in its core is never ever cut off.
So
Ever.
So then why was Rabbi Yechon and Zakkai worried that your misa is a complete misa?
No, Rabbi Yechon Zakkai was, in brachas, Rabbi Yechon Zakkai was crying because Eni Yedei Beis Derech Melichin, I see. He was.
The whole mashal he gave was, if a melech basar adam kills, it's only
Right.
it's not permanent death. But if the Rebbe kills, it's a permanent misa. So what is
Right, but his lashon over there is Gehenna. So even according to everybody, Gehenna is a limit. But the point is that it's a very serious thing. In other words, it's not a melech that I can bribe. But Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, what he was saying was much deeper. He wasn't talking about the punishment. He was talking about the experience.
Didn't he express that there's a permanence to the misa of the Rebbe? As opposed to a melech basar adam, which is not a permanent one. What daf was that on?
Chav Ches.
Look at the lush.
Huh? Yeah, Krishma is the time of Eish. B'chol levavcha, b'chol nafsha. In Kuntasai Spilus. His Spilus is the Chispilus, the Spolver. There's no brachas. I can open it here. We have Shas here. Brachas, it should be Chav Ches, I think. It's not opening. The Arizal writes that even those Jews that it says Eilam Chelek Lo'elam Haba, right? It means that they won't come back in the same guf, but the neshama will always have a tikkun. So Arizal says. Nun alofim yoivlus. But Arizal says that even Yeravim ben Nevat, Yeravim ben Nevat the Yerushalmi already says Yesh L'Chelek Lo'elam Haba. Yeah, Peya, yeah. Dorshe Rishumas in Sanhedrin, Dorshe Rishumas. Yeah. So Rashi explains. Very good.
What's the lashon?
Misasa Mrs. Olam. So Rashi says it doesn't mean Mrs. Olam for eternity. It means it's an Olam Haba also. It's not just Misasa, he could kill me in this world and then it's over. It's an Olam Haba also.
It's a permanent misa.
I don't think Rashi's fakir means it's not permanent.
How does that mean not permanent?
It's then he doesn't have to explain Olam Haba. The Misasa Mrs. Olam. You're forever dead. It means it continues in another world. It continues in the future. It continues in Olam Haba. A melech doesn't have that power over me. Why would Rabbi Yochanan?
It doesn't mean that he's cut off
There's no such a Metzias.
permanently. He's cut off. He's doesn't have a source of chiyus.
It's if a soul is a chelik elakam imal, it's like saying Hashem is cut off.
I understand. I'm just trying to read this into the.
So there's two spchinas. There could be the level of the neshama that's embodied in the guf that can get cut off, but there's a nekuda that's never ever cut off. So that may want to go through a cleansing, but it's never going to be cut off. Even those it says about certainly it says Kol Yisrael Yashem Chedek Le'Olam Haba. Even those that are chayavi kares, right? Doesn't say anyone who's chayav kares doesn't have a chelik in Olam Haba. So what's pshat? So the Arizal explains this by Riches, and that is sometimes you have a mitzias that the neshama comes back in Olam Haba, not in the same guf. Kol Yisrael Yashem Chedek Le'Olam Haba means it's going to come back in the same guf. Maybe the guf won't have a tikkun, but the neshama will come back in a different guf.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Olam Haba there means Tchis HaMeisim in the Mishnah.
But doesn't the Rambam in Hilchos Teshuvos say that
the
worst is finished?
Yeah, so that's what I'm explaining to you. That it's explained in Kabbalah and many Sfarim that that's not in the Nekuda of the Neshama. It can't be. Lo yidach mimeno nidach. Because it's a nitzutz from Ein Sof, so it's not going to be destroyed. It's like saying Hashem is destroyed. The part of the neshama that's manifested in the body, which is what the Rambam is talking about, like he says in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, he's talking about the nefesh hasichlis, that could be cut off in unique situations. And even over there, it's not so pashut. It's hard to get it. There was no tshuva, there was no hiru tshuva. Remember, if there was a hiru tshuva, there's no kadas. Nasa tzaddik. But even in a case where there was not, so there's an element of the neshama that gets cut off, but there's a nekuda in the neshama that never gets cut off, because it doesn't have to be, it can't be cut off, because it's lechatchila something else, it's divine.
Thank you very much.
No problem, a lot of atzlacha. Sure. Thank you for the hisaydidus. Nefesh HaChaim, yeah? Ja, warte. Der Nefesh HaChaim sagt das Bariches. Der Lubavitcher Rebbe schreibt Zemetzen, also hat nicht kein Reihes Bruders, aber bei ihm ist Karev Levada, also Reb Chaim Volozhin hat gelernt, hat gesendet ganz Tanja. Also er schreibt in der Brief. Hat nicht kein Reihes Bruders, aber der Karev Levada, als der Nefesh HaChaim hat gesehen Sefer Tanja. Sie schreibt er. Sie sagt er. Man sagt doch, von der Oisis dort, er kocht sich in der Sache von der Sugis von Tanja. Der Tanja ist ein Tofkuf nun Sein gedruckt. Also Chaim Volozhin hat noch gewinnen, als Sachjahren vor der Nefesh HaChaim sind schon geworden. Ah? Nein, Reb Chaim Volozhin hat gewinnen, er hat sich gechasmet auf. Reb Chaim Volozhin hat gewinnen sehr, gewinnen ein bisschen, nicht gewinnen.
Was kann man sagen, mit Hashem und Mechadisch gehen, was die Gruppe nicht gewiss?
Ah?
Was kann man sagen, mit Hashem und Mechadisch gehen, was die Gruppe nicht gewiss? Kennen Sie nicht das?
Der Baal Shem Tov, Chassidus hat nicht Mechadisch gewinnen, es hat Megala gewinnen. Megala gewinnen.
Die Gruppe hat alles gewiss. Der Baal Shem Tov gehen da zusammengenehmen, oder Jacob, oder da...
Ich wollte nicht mal zusammengenommen. Ich wollte gesagt, er hat ausgebracht in Oisius und in Aderech HaChaim der Nekuda HaPnimis von Jüdischkeit, was ein Neud Mulvada.
Ich kann nur sagen, bei Shem von gewiss etwas, der Gruppe nicht gewiss. Der Eizer.
Sie gewinnen Chilukei Deis, Sie da gewisse in Yonim Chassidus, was der Wilna Gon hat gehalten anders, in Hashkafa.
Aber das ist nicht die Soides von Hashem.
Sie gewinnen Kama Yisoides. Das ist Sachen, Zimtzum, Hashgacha. Sie gewinnen verschiedene Chilukei Deis. So, da haben wir zwischen den Rishonim wegen Hashgacha, so Machleukes wegen Zimtzum zwischen den Mekabalim. So Machleukes von Hislapshus, Elikus und Klippus. Da gucken die Geist HaKodesh, Simen Chafei in Tanya, Beriches, mit verbrennte Zavasa, die waschen Wilna. So live a line over there as the Shchin is, the Klippus is given Chilukei Deis. Avada, aber das ist doch als Chilukei Deis in Jüdischkeit, es ist nicht Chilukei Deis in Jüdischkeit.
aber Shem Tov nicht geöffnet an nahe, Shem Tov
hat Megala gewen, the Pnimis.
You're saying that, I mean, till the Baal Shem Tov, it was a different, yeah, he was Megaleh.
Science, Einstein.
It was a different hour.
Ein neuer Weg zu kicken
Wat-
auf der Welt.
Het ja gemechadisch, want das ist Science. Science is Megala sein, was tut sich?
Rochen ist Science, Rochen ist Science.
Das ist selbe Sache, mis Megala, was ist da, aber als...
Was du sagst, Chiddisch, was nicht jetzt sagen.
It's Derech Havavet Hashem, no?
Was?
Hashkofas Olam und Aderech in Avodas Hashem, was hat da rausgebracht.
Klure, mehr Flamasse, mehr...
Okay.
When did they start teaching? I was in Earl Chanan in LA.
Just a moment.
Oh, sorry.
Achieve it.